welcome to a brand new episode of Make Thrift Buy, the show where you guys send in cool things you found on the internet and then I do my best to recreate them. So first off, show of hands if you love puns. Guys, today's challenge sent to me by Nori is probably one of my favorite Make Thrift Buy suggestions so far. It's a handbag. A handbag. Get it? The whole item is a pun. It's so beautiful. The original design comes from a Japanese brand called Mary Jenny from a year-old collection. So unless you live in Japan and time travel back a year ago, or you buy a cheap wholesale knockoff of this bag, which actually, no, not even that's available anymore. Well, this item is pretty much impossible to get your hands on. Luckily, I'm pretty handy when it comes to DIY, so I'm pretty sure we can make this for ourselves. Fingers crossed we nail it. This and more puns await you in the tutorial. So let's get started. So before we start, I just want to say I did pretty much everything about this project backwards. And for that reason, it took me 2 freaking days to complete. But if you do this project in a much more logical way than I did, then it should only take you about 3 to 4 hours. Just do as I say, not as I do. Anyway, with that said, the first thing I did was to collect up my fabrics. Both fabrics are woven, which means non-stretchy, cottons, which are mid to heavyweight, like linen consistency. The black cotton will make up the bag portion of the tote, and this purpley pink fabric will make up the straps and the hands of the bag. The first thing that I did was to cut 3 rectangles out of my fabrics. The 2 straps are both 42 inches long and 6 inches wide. I wanted the straps to be longer than the length of the straps on the original bag because I like my tote bags to have longer straps. The bag fabric is 36 inches long and 16 inches wide. So first I'm going to make a simple tote bag. To do this, I folded the bag fabric in half lengthways, put pins through both layers to hold them together, and then I sewed down the sides like this. Next, with the bag still inside out, I'm going to box the 2 bottom corners. To do this, first I cut away some of the excess fabric at the seam, about 2 inches worth, and then I pulled the corner out like this. And then I folded the bottom corner so that the side seam ends up right in the middle of the corner. Then I drew a straight line 2 inches up from the corner point to make a triangle. Then I sewed straight across here. After this corner was sewn, I chopped off the corner close to the stitches, repeated this on the other side, and I ended up with this. The bottom of the bag will now look really nice when it's turned the right way around. While the bag was still inside out, I folded the top down about 1.5 inches, and then I sewed all the way around the top to make a hem. To make the straps, I laid each one on my ironing board, and first I folded them like this, bringing the edges in to meet at the center. I ironed these folds in place all the way down the length of the strap. Then I folded this in half, and then I ironed the whole strap flat. And then I repeated this for the other strap. Now unfortunately, I didn't have a thread that matched the color of my fabric, so I chose this pale gray as a nice subtle contrast. Then I folded down the end of each strap like this, and I sewed a box shape at the end, and then I sewed down both sides of each strap like this. And this is what each finished strap looks like. Next, I placed the straps approximately where I wanted them to go on the bag, but I didn't sew them on yet. And this is the point where I started doing everything backwards because I decided that I would try and sew the hands directly onto the bag itself, which I later realized was not the best thing to do. Anyway, to get the right size for each of the hands, I lined up this fabric underneath each strap and I drew a hand shape onto it with chalk. Then I folded this fabric over on itself once and then twice, so that there are a total of 4 layers of fabric underneath. I stuck some pins into the hand shape to stop the fabric from moving, and then I cut out all 4 hands at once. So this is the bit that you hands down should not follow. I sewed the hands down directly onto my tote bag in the positions that I wanted them, but you should just sew them directly onto iron-on patches, these guys, instead. All the sewing still happens in the same way as I do here, so I'll show you how I sewed up the hands, but I highly recommend from my own first-hand experience that you either sew these onto scrap fabric or iron-on patches and not directly onto the tote bag. So I attached each hand to the fabric underneath by first throwing it into an embroidery hoop, and this is totally optional. I just wanted to keep the fabric underneath taut, and then using a very short zigzag stitch, here's me reducing the length of my zigzag stitch to basically nothing, I went around the edges of each hand like this. So that gave me this. Then I stitched the fingernails on in a similar way, using a wide zigzag stitch in contrasting colors. I used purple and red for the nail polish, and this is where we really ran into trouble. because the repeated zigzag stitching caused the fabric to pinch and bunch up around the edges of the hand applique, which I didn't think looked particularly good. So I decided to scrap this bag, but I saved the hands on it and turned them into patches. And I basically made these patches exactly in the same way as I did in my alien t-shirt DIY. So first, I grabbed my fabric glue and I painted a thin line of glue around the edges close to the stitches. This will stop the fabric from fraying when I cut them out. And then I cut the hands out of the fabric really close to those zigzag stitches. I then placed each hand down on top of an iron-on patch. It was a little bit too small for the patch, but I made it work. And I sewed them onto the patches right around the edges. Then I cut all of this out around the hand's outline, and I've got myself a hand patch. I repeated this for all the others to give myself 4 hand patches. You gotta hand it to me. I improvised pretty well there. So then I started the tote again from scratch. But first I'm going to ply the hands up both ends like this. Each matching pair about 2.5 inches away from the top edge of the fabric by ironing them on. And once they were ironed on, I made the bag exactly in the same way as I did the first time around. Folded it in half, sewed down the sides, boxed the corners, sewed a hem around the top, and now I've got a bag with hands on it, and all I have to do is to sew on the straps. I attached each strap to 1 pair of matching hands like this, sewing them on using 2 lines of straight stitches here and here. After repeating this on the other side, I now have a hand bag. So how does it look? How did I go? I love how this turned out. This is my new favorite shopping bag, my new favorite pool bag. I love it. I'm probably gonna add a small pocket on the inside as well. Might even do a lined version. But because this was the first ever tote bag I'd ever made, I wanted to start with the basics. We can get fancy later on. Anyway, my conclusion is thumbs up if you like this tutorial. This bag is pretty cuticle, don't you think? Hey, no, wait, camera, no, wait, no, sorry, I'll stop making hand puns. Camera, wait, no, come on, lend me a hand. Wait, no, I didn't mean to make another hand pun. I'm sorry. Oh man, this has gotten totally out of hand. No, wait, no. In all seriousness, if you like this video and you like the content that I produce, consider helping to support this community by going to patreon.com/Annika Victoria. Any amount, even $1 per video, even $1 per month helps out a ton. This studio space that I'm filming in right now wouldn't be possible without my Patreon fam. In fact, nothing would even be filming right now because the lens on my camera was supported by Patreon patrons when my old one broke. So big shout out to my Patreon family for helping to make this video possible. So I'll see you on my Patreon page. You can click here or visit the link in the description. Bye guys! A bunch of you have been suggesting that I try and make bell sleeve shirts. And what with the 70s revival that's going on in fashion at the moment, they can be found everywhere. However, I thought this would be something that wouldn't be too difficult to make for ourselves, so let's give it a go. Now, I showed you all how to make t-shirts